speakers and then music and then three more speakers.
In case no one's introducing Judy, I may stand and just look at you, like watch you speak, and go like this. You'll know. We'll keep it.
Phones. Folks, they'll be in soon. If you have a phone, as I do, time to turn it off. Or other noisemaker. No, you can play. My colleague, Rabbi Zimmerman, and I are honored to be welcoming everyone to this grand occasion. Just look around. Even after nearly a century, it is hard to say goodbye to a loved one and friend. Yet none of us, of course, goes on forever. Death has taken our beloved Evelyn Siegel. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God. Be with them. For Evelyn's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, for her companionship that we shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. The 23rd Psalm is on your program, those of you who have one. I'm going to begin with the Hebrew. You may join in that, and then certainly when we get to the English, please join in that. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, Bino desha yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'maglei tzedek lama'an shemo. Gam ki elech begeit salmavet lo iwa ra ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai. Dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yerdefuni kol yomei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai l'orech yamim. Eternal God, you are my shepherd, I shall not want. You make me lie down in green pastures, you lead me beside still waters. You restore my soul, you lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. With rod and staff, you comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Evelyn Siegel, 97, seemed almost eternal. No one in this great assemblage really remembers a time when she was not with us. But, says the psalm, reflecting on God's eternity, 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. She was my friend and Ann's and Rabbi and Raleigh Schuer's before us, and we'll hear from Rabbi Zimmerman as well. With remarkable health, longevity is truly a blessing. So tons of us here this morning were blessed to share some of life with this remarkable woman. When one is of the sort of sterling character that Evelyn demonstrated to all of us year after year, decade after decade, life presents opportunity to spiritually enrich the community in which we live. I could read you out of Beth-El's files tribute after tribute after tribute. She and her friends envisioned and started Fort Worth's major seniors program, became programs. Most recently, 60 and Better named its new art space in honor of the organization's founder, Evelyn's Creativity Lab. You gotta love that. Serving seniors, she knew, required more than just meals and other physical necessities. It requires friendships, companionship, worthwhile activities to stimulate the mind. Decades ago, Evelyn rallied her friends and community and made it happen. When this became a major part, this seniors program of the Fort Worth community, she would become president of Senior Citizens Services of Fort Worth. Here at Beth-El, similarly, there were many honors. She was one of our 8 over 80 some years back, and in 2014, the Person of the Year at our annual Mickey Goldman Spaghetti Supper. She was on the religious school committee for years, and recently, in her 90s, on the temple board. The Jewish Education Agency published a tribute book to honor her at their annual event back in 2005. And beyond the Jewish community, Evelyn gave of her creative spirit year after year to Fort Worth, teaching art at Fort Worth Country Day School and also at her beloved summer haunt in Aspen, Colorado. She and Martin loved going up there, and so did the rest of you of the family. As proud as she had every right to be of all of that and more, it but scratches the surface of her benevolence and is not what was most important to Evelyn. When she got up to say thank you at the 8 over 80 dinner, only time for a brief word from each of them, she said, I went and wrote it down, "You don't know what it was like raising 4 boys. But we made it. And you, Beth-El, are our family, and we love you." Evelyn was a people person, a family person, a gentle, loving, caring, hardworking, and creative woman from early in her life. So let's back up a bit. She was born Evelyn Lifches in Columbia, South Carolina, and apparently raised pretty orthodox. I just this past week learned this, but her mother died when she was only 13, but not before instilling in her a love of tzedakah, usually translated charity, but the root meaning is actually just tzedek. We are taught not only to give money, but to care and work for the benefit of all. Evelyn's older sister helped raise her for several years, but clearly her mother's lesson on the importance of tzedakah really took. Evelyn went to college at the University of South Carolina, and when Martin Siegel, originally from up north, came back from World War II and visited South Carolina, at Holy Day time, at the synagogue on Yom Kippur yet, he saw this lovely woman dressed in a pink suit, and the die was cast. They were a grand couple, Evelyn and Martin. They married and moved to Mineral Wells, not a bad place for Martin and family to start a business, but they turned out happier when there was a Jewish community too, Fort Worth. So after having 2 sons in Mineral Wells, they came here and had a couple more. 4 boys, Jeff, Terry, John, and Aaron. She did have her hands full, but it paid dividends over time. 4 daughters-in-law, Pam, Cynthia, Susie, and Nancy. 12 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren. Fortunately, she liked to cook and just loved being with the family. Much though she loved to make art, the mishpacha, the family, was her chief passion. She and Martin, amazingly, had 64 years together, and she still had another 10 years or so to go after he passed in 2014. With all of us, family and friends galore, to keep her company. Was that enough to keep this pillar of the community busy all these years? No, not even close. Evelyn's life from early on was full of art, making it, collecting it, especially teaching it, and selling it. The Siegels fell in love with Native American art, and from New Mexico and elsewhere developed quite a collection. Evelyn was a mainstay of the Fort Worth art scene, opening the Evelyn Siegel Gallery. She encouraged artists from all over the area to develop their skills, giving them a place to show and sell their work. The art world may not be a place to get rich in dollars, but she managed for over 20 years in this business. Many an artist and many a Fort Worth and vicinity home have been aesthetically enriched because of Evelyn Siegel's taste for talent. Is that all? Well, of course not. One cannot begin to say all that deserves telling in a wonderful life of nearly a century, and I need to get out of the way and let some of you hear the personal reflections of others. Son Terry is going to introduce all of that. Terry.
You all should be up here. This is an incredible view. I have several pages to talk about, but fortunately, the rabbi said it all, and you all won't have to listen to a lot of what I say, because I'm just going to skip over it. Just got to look. I just got to take a moment. Mom would be overwhelmed. She'd be so happy to know that you all are here and celebrating her life and what she did. Just, you guys should come up here. Okay. Mom was real specific in what she laid out for what she wanted in the way of a service when she died. Not just a service, but how she wanted to be buried, where she wanted to, what kind of design on her headstone, who was going to officiate at this service. Where Pop just wanted to be buried and put in the ground and be done with it, Mom wanted to make a deal of it. She was really good about it. We wrote it down, we wrote it out, we went over it over the years. Even when Pop was alive, we would go over it. And so she was very specific that she wanted Rabbi Mecklenburger to talk about her life and who she was and what it was about. And then Rabbi Zimmerman, who was fairly new, in fact, I'm not even sure he was here yet, to speak and officiate the service. If you'll take just a minute and look at the program on the outside, it was really important to us to make sure that you had an idea that Mom wasn't always old. So that black and white picture goes back to, she's probably 36, maybe 40 years old. She was really just starting to hit her prime with raising kids, because most of us boys were fairly grown. By the time she was 36, Jeff and I were sort of heading out the house. John and Aaron were just starting to hit their stride with their teenage years. So she was really starting to make a statement to the community. And the first really big one, as Rabbi mentioned, was senior citizens, and working in conjunction with a bunch of women here at Beth-El and being promoted and pushed by Roz Rosenthal, her dear friend of over 70 years. That's a whole nother story and a whole nother generation. They really, she really started down the path. If you'll also open up the program, you'll see Martin and Evelyn together. They were a dynamic duo. They weren't just a dynamic duo as on the outside world to the community, but they were, inside. They knew how to wrangle us boys, and then their grandkids. Always very proud of having great grandkids. They wanted all of us boys to be, if possible, to be grandparents. So look at the program. Now, as I look out there and I see all of you, I know a lot of you, but I don't know all of you. But you all don't know who all these people are sitting down here, but you've probably met them over the years. So I just want to tell you what you're looking at down here. So on this side, to my left, your right, is the immediate Siegel family. My 4 brothers, our wives, as Rabbi pointed out, what was called the grandkids and their spouses, and now the great-grandkids. And we dominate this side. On this side are cousins, Siegels, both the Siegel side and the Lifshay side, which is really the Hayden side. Mom's older sister, Nat, who actually lived to be 100. And I might make a mention that this is being streamed, and her cousin Libby, at 102 years old, is watching. 102, not too bad. If you have Lifshay genes, you have a good opportunity to live a while. And then on the Siegel side, my dad had 3 siblings, and his sister, Carol, who spent time growing up here, is 90, Aunt Carol. Anyway, she's 90 and being streamed in. Skip that. Mom also had a brother, Ray, who passed away in October of 23, October 6th. Weird coincidence, we celebrated his memorial a year ago this weekend. And I'll just make a note, Ray was, and they didn't have any kids, he and Judith, but they were incredibly giving, and he was a professor at Berkeley for over 50 years, had thousands of students that just admired him, and actually had a turnout similar to this at his memorial last year. So Mom, and so I look at it as Mom, the outside world, the inside world. So up here in front is the inside, and sitting over here are some folks that we've asked to speak to give you an idea of Mom to the outside world. Let me get to that. I'm going to skip this. Thank you, Ralph. I don't think I actually could have gotten through it, so I really do appreciate it. Judge Whitley, I need to point you out. I didn't see you. Pardon me, but Judge Whitley has been an incredible servant to this community. He has been always just the best, but a great advocate for seniors, and he and Mom collaborated on a lot of things that made this community a better place if you were a senior. We weren't seniors at the time. We look in the mirror, we're not seniors now, but it made a difference. So that gives me a chance to segue over to our speakers. So our first speaker this morning is going to be Jerry Mossman. Jerry was the executive director of the Senior Citizens Group for almost 12 years, and he and Mom collaborated constantly. Our second speaker will be Eric Lombardi. Eric is the head of school at Country Day School. Eric is coming up on his 10th year, and Mom went and introduced herself and grabbed him by the ear very early on, and so he has a very good understanding of Mom. Third person is John Holt Smith. John grew up in this community. John went to Country Day. He is an artist. He is a past student. We've asked John to speak about being a student of Evelyn's and a mentor, and speak for the artist community that is in here today. Also, I'll just put a little plug in for John. His art is hanging in the new lower school building at Country Day School. It's brand new, just opened last week. It is gorgeous. But John's work really enhances it. It's really unique. But we look forward to John's perspective. And then we're going to take a short little break. We're going to have a little cello music. Then we've asked Judy Greenman. We're going to kind of change the tone a little bit. We've asked Judy to speak about Mom as a woman, having 4 boys. We had no idea. what it would be like to be a woman. But, you know, I mean, we had an idea what it looked like. We just didn't have a grasp of the emotional content of being a woman. And in this case, it's a woman of valor, a woman who really, you know, it wasn't just a matter of raising kids. It was a woman who reached out over and beyond and really followed her passions for making a difference with the world. That's the part I skipped over. And then we're going to follow that with David Hayden, Dr. David Hayden. He is the oldest of our generation of kids. Mom's oldest nephew. Give me a second. Okay. And then Jason Siegel, who's Dr. Jason Siegel. And Jason is going to speak as the oldest grandchild. And then my brother Aaron is going to speak. Don't know what he's going to talk about. You never know what he's going to talk about. But I bet some of you could stand up and say a few things, and he'd really talk a long time. And then Rabbi Zimmerman's going to bring it home for us. He'll bring us back to neutral, and we'll go on from there. I've been asked, I want to thank Carmen, Becky, Lonnie, Rosemarie, sitting here. These were caretakers, caregivers, really gave Mom great tender attention in the last years of her life. Carmen, like 25 years of her life. I mean, just forever. I don't know if Dr. D'Amico's in here or Dr. D'Souza, but thank you. They lifelong doctors and really did a great job and is, you know, helped support all of us, and my brother John in particular, over about a 10, 12-year period where he was managing the health care of Mom and Pop together. And then I'll go back to Cousin David. During that 10 to 12-year period, he was helping manage us through all these trials with Mom and Pop and giving us guidance. And then in the last couple of years, Jason, who really helped us and helped Mom and really made the last part of her life really exceptional. And thank you, Jason. I should thank my sister-in-laws, but I don't want to point anyone out. But really and truly, the last year and a half, it was a lot of effort. And Cynthia and Pam did a great job. Prior to that, Susie, just exceptional support for John. So we talk about the inside. Evelyn wasn't easy. She was never easy on us. But we're here today. Lastly, thank you to the rabbis. Thank you to all the staff at Beth-El for helping put this together and help keeping us organized and getting things ready for the reception afterwards. And we really want you all to join us. There's about as many of us immediate related as there are the rest of you, so you can spread out and come see us. You all are really appreciated. You're really appreciated. You're really important, and you're loved. Jerry?
Thank you, Terry, for inviting me to share a few words. I'm Jerry Mossman. I was the executive director of Senior Citizen Services of Greater Tarrant County for many years. It's now known as 60 and Better. And Evelyn was a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of seniors. By the way, seniors is a good word. As you probably know, she was, with the help of the National Council of Jewish Women, Evelyn was the founder, as the rabbi spoke. She attended a state conference on aging, and She learned how fast the older population was growing and how important socialization was for isolated older adults. So with the support of the NCJW and others, Evelyn and her family actually renovated a building on Hemphill Street, the first drop-in center for senior citizens. The center opened in 1967. Evelyn was only 40 years old. I met Evelyn in 2009 when I took over the leadership of Senior Citizen Services. And I can tell you I was apprehensive because I knew of other agencies in which the founder was still alive and active and wanted to run the show and didn't really want any changes from someone new. Evelyn was not that way. She made it clear that she was 100% supportive and only wanted the best for the older adults of Tarrant County. Most impressive to me was that all her commitment to serving older adults came from her deep Jewish faith. She told me in her home, sitting on the couch, about growing up in a household where caring for the less fortunate was a responsibility, a religious obligation, putting coins aside for the poor. The rabbi has already spoken the Jewish word, tzedakah. But Evelyn was never self-serving in all this, but always believed in empowering older adults to live with health, with independence, with dignity. She said in the video that 60 and Better has on their website, if we are lucky enough to age, we need to help those who cannot help themselves. She also stated in her words, from the get-go, socialization is number one in maintaining and having good health. While I was there, Evelyn served many years on our board of directors in many positions. And she always shared her vision, her hopes for older adults in Tarrant County, that older adults would remain active and healthy and engaged in their communities. I want to share a fond memory I have of Evelyn. It was in visiting the second senior center after the one on Hemphill. This was Fellowship Corner on New York Avenue, predominantly an African American center. And they were holding a special concert. And they made a point to invite Evelyn, who was the founder of that center as well as the other, and actually, Evelyn hired the director for that center, for Fellowship Corner, named Aline Washington. Well, I sat next to Evelyn, but I saw the joy in her heart and the smile on her face during this concert. She and I were both deeply moved by the glorious choirs that sang and the inspired angelic songs. The last time I visited with Evelyn was at 60 and Better when they dedicated Evelyn's Creativity Lab that you've heard about a little over 2 years ago. Many of her family were there, as well as civic and community leaders, to honor her and to thank her for her long dedication to serving older adults in Tarrant County. Happily, Evelyn's life-giving legacy at 60 and better continues today. With the leadership of Becky Orander as Executive Director, with Evelyn's son, Terry Siegel, on the board recently for 6 years, and her granddaughter, Jennifer Siegel LeGrand, is presently on the board. In conclusion, let me just say, Evelyn cared with all her heart for her family, for Martin, for her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. She also cared with all her heart for others, especially isolated older adults who need 60 and better and organizations like that to help them to age with independence, with health, with dignity. Finally, thank you very much, Evelyn, for sharing your faith, for sharing your vision, and sharing your love with all of us. Shalom.
I'm going to read from a bronze plaque at our school. The Fort Worth Country Day Wall of Honor, established 2014. Recognizing those who have significantly influenced in a lasting way the quality of Fort Worth Country Day. Honorary Class of 1999, Faculty. Evelyn Siegel, Honorary Class of 99, brought her artist's vision to Fort Worth Country Day in 1968. Hired by founding headmaster Peter Schwartz to shape an art department, she taught grades 1 through 6 visual arts and expanded the program to all students kindergarten through 12th. Bringing a passion for visual arts and a commitment to students as people and as learners, Evelyn's legacy is both the continued joy students find in the school's ceramic studio today and the alumni who appreciate art in profound ways for the rest of their lives. I had the honor of reading those words to the Country Day community for the first time as Evelyn Siegel's bronze plaque was being unveiled at the school in 2017. There's a wonderful photograph of Evelyn on that plaque on the school's Wall of Honor. The photograph on the plaque has one problem, though. It does not do justice to the sparkle in Evelyn's eyes. I haven't stopped thinking about that sparkle since I heard about her passing. I first saw it in 2015. I was in my first months as a part of the Fort Worth Country Day community, and I was getting to meet a number of remarkable community members, particularly people who were around in the school's early years in the 1960s and 70s, establishing the foundations of Fort Worth Country Day School. As a first-time head of school in 2015, I embraced the part of that job that I heard others describe as being the school's storyteller-in-chief. Aspiring to do that job well gave me the excuse of reading from the archives, watching some old videos, and most joyously, meeting a lot of truly remarkable people who were at the heart of our school's success. Lots of people were helping me get stories straight from as many of the Fort Worth Country Day legends as I could. I watched a video of the school's 35th birthday, the only chance I had to see and hear from founding board chair Perry Bass and founding head of school Pete Schwartz. I had time with 3 founding trustees, Betty Claire Dupree McKnight, Georgianne Carter Bayan, and Pat Schutz. I met with Tim Williams, class of 1978, who was working on a feature film about the school's first athletic director, Colonel Rocky Rossiker. I had many opportunities to learn from the incredible Clearlease Connect, one of the school's original teachers, and from the deeply devoted Dan Block, an almost original 52-year faculty member who had begun his days at the school alongside Evelyn. As a part of my learning of the lore, I had gone out to Tacoma, Washington to spend time with the second head of school, Ted Sanford, around the time of his 92nd birthday. Ted had many stories he wanted to share. He was so proud of his time at Country Day. One of his proudest contributions was having had the wisdom to listen to Evelyn Siegel in growing the school's initial art curriculum, facilities, and faculty. In my tour of luminaries, I read about them first. So I had read about Evelyn before I met her. Before I met her, I saw the pottery collection she and Martin gifted to the school. I heard stories of her impact on students like John Holt Smith before I met her. All of the reading I had done, though, did not prepare me for the sparkle in Evelyn's eyes. When I first met her, face to face, she smiled when I shook her hand. She held on to my hand for a bit. She looked me in the eye, her eyes sparkling, and the stories began. I received that same handshake and saw that same sparkle every time I saw her after that initial meeting. Evelyn was so proud of the Fort Worth Country Day Art Department. She was so proud of the teachers she brought to the school. She was so proud of the students that she and those teachers impacted. But when I met her, even as an 87-year-old, she was not just about reflecting on the past. She had some work for me to do. She really wanted her 60 and better friends to be able to connect with her Fort Worth Country Day world. My favorite project she had me working on was a Valentine's dance for the 60 and better crowd, a dance that she envisioned taking place right where the Fort Worth Country Day upper school dances occurred. And she made clear she expected the upper schoolers to be a part of the event, including dancing with the 60 and betters. That's where the sparkle in the eyes worked its magic. How could I turn Evelyn Siegel down? Some logistics ended up not allowing the dance to occur, but I treasure the memories of being with Evelyn as she hatched an idea, as she gently pushed that idea out there, and as she activated the sparkle to motivate her minions. In asking me to speak, Terry talked about how much he appreciated the time I spent with his mom. I said to Terry without hesitation, all that time was selfish, including another alumni event in the ceramics room at school in November and coffee and nosh at her dining room table late this fall. I was so lucky to get so much time with Evelyn, so lucky to get her undivided attention on so many occasions, so lucky to be around as she joined numerous Country Day alumni gatherings. So lucky to be around her with her cherished ceramics teacher successor, Jerry Maley, in Fort Worth Country Day's single most beautiful classroom, the ceramics room. Fort Worth Country Day is in its 62nd year. It has more than 4,800 alumni, all but the very first of those graduates from our first 60 years. In addition to all of the graduates of the school for the next 60 years, not to mention the 4 Siegel sons and many grandchildren and now great-grandchildren, have benefited and will continue to benefit from the commitment of our school to the arts, a commitment that began with Evelyn Siegel joining the Fort Worth Country Day community in 1968. We were so lucky at Fort Worth Country Day to have had Evelyn Siegel in our community. I was so lucky to get to know her as a part of that community. No doubt we are all here today because we know we were all so lucky to know Evelyn Siegel. Thank you, Evelyn, for sharing your passion and allowing us to always remember the sparkle in your eyes and the sparkle you brought to all of our lives.
Beauty is a lot of things. Easy isn't one of them. Who better to describe to young students what beauty is, to encourage it, to cultivate it? Who embodied beauty more than Evelyn Siegel? Nobody. Let's keep in mind that Evelyn was teaching children of different ages, different skill levels. She could provide expert instruction in ceramics, painting, sculpture, drawing. But to me, Evelyn's greatest gift was her ability to teach, to lead, to instruct, without seeming to do so. With the younger students, you would often have a child in the class who had produced something rather unremarkable, especially in comparison to the other more gifted students and what they were working on. But Evelyn would talk to all of her students. She would make the rounds. She would come up to them all and say, "What do we have here? What are we working on?" Now, she could have told this child exactly what to do to make that work better. But Evelyn's gift was the ability to allow her students to discover what it was they needed, what the work needed, seemingly all on their own. So that suddenly, miraculously, after Evelyn had left and moved on to talk to another student, it would occur to this child that there was something they could do to this work, to make it better, to lift it, to elevate it. And more importantly, that that thing was within themselves. The solution was there, and when the bell rang, instead of leaving the classroom dejected or even a little embarrassed, that student would leave feeling a sense of accomplishment, of fledgling artistic pride. I know because I was often that student. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, Evelyn had to deal with the high schoolers. Now, the high schoolers had more talent. They had worked on their skill, but they were high schoolers after all. They knew more than their parents, than their teachers. These were young Picassos, young Frankenthalers in the making. And they had often, even within a single art period, created something of a minor masterpiece. And they were sitting there proudly, admiring it, when Evelyn would make her rounds and eventually come to them. Evelyn wouldn't provide any detailed criticism, but suddenly, miraculously, not long after she had moved on to talk to another student, glaring inadequacies in the work would appear. Solutions would as well, but it would require a lot more of the young artist. They would have to dig deeper, work harder, be more patient, and spend more time with the work. So when the bell rang for these students, they often left humbled, if with a plan. I know because I'm embarrassed to say I was often that student as well. Evelyn retired not long into my high school career. It didn't seem like it initially. She was often still around there in the art studio, especially when I needed her. Later, when I moved to New York, I sought Evelyn out whenever I could. At her home in Colorado, in the summers, at Anderson Ranch. I wasn't seeking specific advice or even encouragement. I just wanted to be with her, to sit with her, to hear her calm voice. Art is a lot of things. Easy isn't one of them. Most days, I'm humbled by a painting that I am working on. Often on the drive home, it will occur to me, suddenly, mysteriously, that there's a solution. Usually that means I'm going to have to work that much harder. But nothing we love is easy. Evelyn taught me to admire the difficulty, to see the beauty in the unfinished work and to strive for it. I am one of Evelyn Siegel's students, still.
I have to move it down after John Holt there. Today we're gathered here to talk about Evelyn and what a privilege it is for me to be able to do this. Evelyn was a true Renaissance woman, and she was my friend. Evelyn's story is one of wisdom, kindness, passion, and unwavering dedication to her family, to her friends, and to her community. My friendship with Evelyn began when I was first married, and I met her at my in-laws' house. They were very good friends, and our connection deepened over time. For a long time, I did call her Mrs. Siegel. I finally braved it and said Evelyn, and in very special moments, I do call her Evie, as her best friend Roz always did. Very dear, very special. She became a cherished part of our lives. She had a unique gift for friendship, as all have said here. She had friends of all ages. It didn't matter to her. She crossed generations, and she made everyone feel valued and loved. She had many passions, as you heard, and certainly art was one that followed her through her life. We're lucky enough here at the temple that she participated in a little oral histories where she talked about growing up, and I think it's written in there that when she grew up in her backyard, she played with the mud in their backyard, and she made pots and did whatever she could to make early pottery, and she brought her friends in too. And that was something Evelyn did all through her life. She always had support from her friends. We expected to be called if we didn't offer quite often, but she started with that group in the backyard. And we're lucky that we have an archives here to hear some of the stories. I've got one more later. She had many passions throughout. Excuse me, I just did that. As a teacher, Evelyn shared her love of art with countless students like John Holt at Country Day and here at Beth-El. I want to add on something to the art department that she created, though, at Country Day. Her boys were at Country Day, and one day they said, told her what they were doing in art class, which was held in a temporary building. Half of it was music, half of it was art. And she went over there to see what they were doing, and they were gluing noodles on paper with glue. That really bothered her, so she immediately stormed into Peter Schwartz's room and said, "We need an art department." He didn't question it. He said, "We have one, and you're it." And she stayed there for many years. And that was Evelyn, though. She saw a need, and she responded to it. Very exciting that we were able to share that here at Beth-El also. When she believed deeply in education, along with her close friend Roz and their families, she created an educational endowment for our religious school. And her dedication to nurturing young minds was one of her many ways of making the world a better place. Even before she was a senior citizen, and I always think that was nice at 40, that she thought about the seniors and making their lives busy. And you've heard how well she has succeeded in that. And again, she got her friends volunteering at the Senior Citizen Center, and they've supported her at 60 and better. What an opportunity it is. Evelyn's faith and her connection to Beth-El were deeply important to her. She raised her children, as you've heard, at Beth-El, and it spanned decades. She saw the value, as I said, of education. When we built the new building, it was very exciting. 25 years ago, Evelyn was on the committee, and she kept an eye on what we were doing. So we have almost a juried art collection here in the building, which Evelyn was proud to be part of. She also had been known to come and hang pictures in our boardroom, so we could have an art exhibit here at Temple. She did. When we built the building, though, the one thing she insisted on again, and she could be very strong, as you all know, she said, "We need an art room." Now, I don't know about how many of y'all, whether your synagogues or your churches have art rooms, but we have one here. And we have a kiln. Now, I think we're alone in that. She not only provided that, but she taught people how to use it, and the kids use it, and it is still here in our art room here. The fact that she stayed with it, she just didn't give something. She stayed and made sure that it worked out. Even in her 90s, Evelyn took on a new challenge, serving on the Beth-El board. She loved serving on the board and was a vital participant. She considered it her swan song, though, but those who worked alongside her knew it was yet another chapter in her life of dedication and purpose. Now, Evelyn was a wonderful friend. She was the friend who would pick up the phone just out of nowhere to just check in. "I haven't seen you in a while. How are you doing? Do you need anything?" Friends usually call to visit and chat. She really cared, not that your friends don't, but she really cared about what was happening, certainly in my life and many of our friends' life. For Evelyn, though, family always came first. She cherished every moment spent with her 4 sons and her delightful daughters. She was so pleased to have you all, and she talked about you often. And of course, the families that you have given to her, especially during the holidays when the whole family would get together, and Evelyn would fill the house with love and laughter and the delicious food that she was known for. Her heart belonged to her family, and she poured her love into each and every one of you all. Evelyn told me when she moved here from South Carolina about 75 years ago, she made friends with 2 other women who came, one from New Jersey and I believe one from Boston. And they cried daily about being here away from what they had grown up with. Certainly Texas is different than all, especially after she started in Mineral Wells. I shouldn't say anything, but in Fort Worth, it still was different for them. And after crying a few times, she finally said, "All right, we've had our cry. Now it's time to make this our home." And she told me this. She said, we and these 3 women remained friends for over 75 years. They made the community a better community. Evelyn was beautiful, educated, multifaceted, embracing multiple roles throughout her life as a wife, a mother, an artist, a teacher, an advocate for seniors, a supporter of Judaism, a mentor, a role model for many of us, and a wonderful friend. Her legacy will endure in the lives she touched and the world she championed. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. So the family got together last night and we shared some anecdotes, and a number of them were about her driving. And so I'm going to sort of pick up there. And so I'm going to start with a story that's really silly, but it also reminds me of Aunt Evelyn, who was a strong character who would literally change the landscape if she needed to. So one afternoon, Aunt Ev and I drove down into Aspen. This was in the earlier mid-1970s, still in the age of big Cadillacs for Uncle Martin and Aunt Evelyn. At first, we couldn't find a parking place, but then we passed a section where there was no curb, and several cars had pulled parallel to the sidewalk onto the grass. We passed a spot that looked way too small, but Aunt Ev, with a mischievous grin on her face, looked at me and said, "I'll bet I can fit right into that spot." So she pulled forward, then she turned her head. She started very slowly going backwards, and she lined up the big Texas caddy and very carefully started to back up toward the car behind her. She was going so slowly over irregular grass that she didn't realize when the caddy was in direct physical contact with the car behind her. For some reason, probably pure luck, the car behind her didn't have its parking brake on. So Aunt Ev didn't notice that to continue moving backward was requiring more gas than just before. But with careful, continual sort of touches on the gas pedal, she slowly continued back up into the spot. Not for a second realizing that she was pushing the car behind her backward to create her own spot. After a minute or two, Aunt Ev said she thought she had more than enough room. She said she'd just pull forward a foot or so and straighten her car out. Quote, "I also want to make it easier for the person behind me." So she closed her car door, walked out into the middle of the street, looked at her parking job, grinned from ear to ear. "And you didn't think I could park there," she said to me with utter delight. So Aunt Ev was 19 years old when she carried me home from the hospital. My mom broke her back, and Aunt Ev took me to the beach every day and told people I belonged to her. Aunt Ev's Baltimore relatives labeled her the firecracker when she visited them as a teenager. My Uncle Irvin labeled her Scarlett O'Hara. I was in love with my Aunt Evelyn from my first conscious memories until still today, since it's impossible for me not to see so much of her in her children and grandchildren. I loved her July 4th parties on Red Mountain, and I loved that she made a chopped liver bar mitzvah boy for one of my brother's kids. And I loved what she said on Red Mountain in 1991. Now, I need to set this up a little bit. The scene. Cynthia was there with an infant named Karen. And my wife, Kathy, was there, overwhelmed with a 3-month-old infant named Matthew, who was an absolute screaming banshee in those days. So I loved my Aunt Evelyn when she said to my wife, when I wasn't there, that it was really important for David and Terry to take the day and go fishing together. She wasn't all sugar. She was a feisty woman, as you've all heard. On one dinner occasion in Columbia, South Carolina, when she tried to assassinate her new stepmother with a kitchen knife, a woman named Bess, whom she really didn't like, and whom my grandfather Isaac married perhaps a bit too soon after their mother died. Between the early 1970s and the mid-1980s, I spent most summers in Aspen sponging off Aunt Ev and Uncle Martin. And I actually spent more time as an adult with Aunt Ev than I did with my own parents. There were times when we were the only two staying in the house on Red Mountain, and her sense of adventure came out. The Wheeler Opera House then was still in decline, and it was run as a movie theater. And they had a midnight movie series that attracted a rowdy crowd. Aunt Ev and I ate popcorn and hooted with the rest of them, and saw old movies like Errol Flynn's Robin Hood and early Brando films. So, a final legacy from Aunt Ev that perhaps flowed naturally from the closeness she had with my mom. The behavior that they modeled for us with the two families has left a group of cousins with the rich gift of also being almost brothers. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here on this cold day. You know, Grandma didn't like cold. She wore cuddle duds, these like silk underwear under her clothing every day, summer, winter, always. So I don't know that she would be here today, so it's nice to have her spirit with us. It's nice that she could join us today this way. My name's Jason Siegel. I'm Evelyn's oldest grandson. And behind me, my siblings, my cousins. As many of you know, we come from 4 different homes, but we were all raised together with a common bond that was Martin and Evelyn. The love that they shared for us, the love that we shared with them, unites all of us, and we're here together today to share that back. Grandma, Gigi, Grams, Grandmama, grandmother. Wasn't she grand? Larger than life when we were all young, and somehow has remained that way to this day. And we're all here because we all feel the weight of her life. So what do you say? What do you say about a woman who was so engaged? She was generally interested in everybody, all people. She showed the same interest and care for everyone she met and talked to. Yeah, and I know you all know what I'm talking about. She talked to people, whether it was an artist at the ranch or the woman checking out her groceries in Aspen. She talked, and more importantly, she listened. She asked questions. And the amazing part was, she remembered everything. She remembered the person and what they said, and what their husband did, and what their kids were doing in college. And if she ever bumped into that person again, she remembered, and she would talk to them like a friend that she had known. And that meant something to people. I think that means something to everybody. We all want to be seen. We all want to be noticed. And I think our grandmother did that better than anyone that I've ever met. What do you say about a woman with such presence? You could feel her weight in a room, large room, small room. She just commanded it in a soft but intentional way. She was always dressed beautifully, not necessarily expensively, but just perfectly, always. But I think she also lived with presence. Mindfulness is really common. It's a hot topic in our culture, and we're encouraged to practice mindfulness. She lived it every day. My cousin Samantha found a quote. She shared it last night, but I wanted to share it with all of you. She said, Grandma said, to Samantha, the secret to life is to enjoy each day as it comes. Don't bitch, don't moan, don't complain. If it's raining, it's raining. Just thank God for the day and enjoy it, because that's what I do. What do you say about someone who was capable of showing so much support? There's 12 of us, and we're all very different in many ways. And yet she met each one of us where we were in our life with that same interest and curiosity. Good times, bad times, it didn't matter. She was there, always interested. We disappointed her at times. And of course, when she thought we were in the wrong, she let us know in no uncertain terms. But it never cost us her love. That was unwavering. And we are all where we are today because of that steadfast and consistent support. My sister wanted me to share. Tara is an educator and an artist in the community, and she wanted me to share some words from her. Beginning at the age of 10, Grams covertly taught me the most valuable lessons in life while sitting over a potter's wheel. Patience. You're not going to get it on the first try, Tara. You must have patience to learn. Eventually, you will get it. Failure. It's okay to make mistakes. It's just part of it. The best thing about clay is that if you mess it up, you can always wedge it back together and make something new. Perseverance. If it doesn't work multiple times, you'll want to give up. Remember, you've got to just try again. Communication. Working clay on a potter's wheel is about your body communicating with the clay. You never try to force it. Accepting support. Never touch the clay with only one hand. Your hands must support each other to be able to make the clay move in the way you want. Foundation. Learn to do the right way first, and then make it your own. I'm among thousands who were taught these valuable lessons, but possibly her greatest gift was not in her words, but in her example of generosity. As an educator and a grandmother, she gave so much to all of us. Until we meet again. So what do you say about someone who modeled strength for 97 years? When she was in her 50s, someone probably knows this better than me, but when she was in her 50s, someone came to her and said, Evelyn, you need to lift weights. So she started doing it. And she went to the gym 2 to 3 days a week, every week, until just the last few years when she just couldn't. And then we even had people coming to the house so she could do it at home. She understood the importance. She saw the benefit. She practiced so that she could model it to the people around her. Even in the summer in Aspen, she would go to the Snowmass Club and work out in the summer on vacation. She had every intention of living to 100 years old. And while we all hope to do that, she had a plan. She was intentional. She understood moderation. She understood the importance of community, which we've heard about of rest, of nutrition, of exercise, of lifelong learning. I recall her being an early adopter for technology, at least for her generation. My grandfather didn't even want to know how to turn a computer on, while she was learning and working email and scanners and iPhones and digital picture frames. I mean, she embraced life as it came, and she was intent on meeting it head on. What do you say about someone who had so much energy? She was blessed with energy. She felt it, I think, up until the very end. When she turned about 90, I remember being with her, and I asked her, I said, Grandma, close your eyes. She closed her eyes really tight. I said, how old do you feel? And she didn't even pause, and she said, 18. And she opened her eyes. We were standing in her bathroom, and she looked in the mirror, and she goes, I do not know who that old woman is in the mirror. And didn't she live that way? She runs circles around most people. She poured out her energy generously, and inclusively. Many of you have been part of Siegel family gatherings, the flock, as we like to call ourselves. We like to party. She loved a party. Whether it was 4th of July in Aspen or Passover here in Fort Worth, or just having cold cuts after playing tennis on a weekend. Gathering was important, and she modeled that for us for as long as we can remember. She told my cousin Samantha on the last day she was still able to speak to have a party. It was only a few months ago that she was dancing with all of us with a huge smile on her face at my cousin Jessica's wedding. And she was having fun, and she was so proud of Jessica. But I think she was also smiling because she looked around and she realized that her family understood that she had taught to gather and to celebrate one another. What do you say to someone who has been the constant, the inspiration, and the gift for so many all over the world? What do you say? I took her hands and her face in my hands, and we shared a smile and tears in her final days. And I thanked her from every bit of me and everything that she is for who she was and what she has done, because we are all forever changed for having her in our lives. We love you, Grandma.
Thanks, Jason. That's going to make it easy. I'm Evelyn Siegel, and I was raised by wolves. You've heard about the Evelyn Siegel from Country Day and the woman who flunked me in art. That's not the woman I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about basically who was mommy, then mom, lady. When I couldn't call her Miss Siegel, I called her lady at Country Day. Then it became mom again, and then it was mother, because I had transitioned into that spot of helping her with life in general, and where she would call me Aaron Michael when she wanted my attention, I'd say mother. And then, of course, the name that she hated most was the Rottweiler. But I was raised by wolves. So, talk about grief, because there's grief you feel for the loss, and then there's the grief you give your parents. There's John. Jeff. I'm down here. I was a good son. Terry's not even on the podium. If Terry gave grief, it's because Jeff, and that just moved him up. You know, if Jim Avery and Jeff ran a car off the road, that's Jeff. If they got caught in a hot tub in Aspen and pulled out by the police, it's Jeff. In fact, Terry will tell you, they'd have got away if it hadn't been for Jeff. But I gave my mom some grief, and she always told me, she had that finger, you're going to get it back double. And she was right. She just didn't tell me she was going to be the one to give it. So Nancy said I could say one story that would give Mom a more human deal. I heard her use the F word twice in my life. Once talking about one of her best friend's divorce with my dad. And we were in the kitchen, and we were looking for the knives and the door. we were getting out. She was not happy. And then in 1981, I was doing what I wanted to do, and I was 5,000 miles away in a phone booth, and I called home, and she used the F word with anger. You get your effing ass on the next plane to Paris, France. Your father's looking for you. And I did. So you really, there were more Evelyn Siegels than we can count. She was Mom. I'm going to miss her. We did Zoom every Friday night for the last 4 years because of COVID. We still do. We're going to continue to do it. We do Zoom. She enjoyed the Zoom. She got to see all the cousins, sometimes extended friends. And we'll continue to do our Zoom. It's our Friday night thing. Do the candles and Shabbat. Isaac's a musician, and during the time that Nancy was living in Colorado, and during the time that we would go to Mom's house for Shabbat, and sometimes just if we were there during the week changing light bulbs, whatever it was, he'd go in and play the piano. She just loved him to play the piano. It was her favorite. It became sort of the thing that if I was in Colorado, he would still go to Shabbat if he didn't have a gig, and then afterwards eat an ice cream sandwich and play the piano. So the end of all of this today, Isaac's going to play as he did for my mother. The last human thing she did with me, she was nonverbal, and it was at the end. He played the piano for her, and she smiled. She couldn't speak anymore, but she knew. She knew he was there, and she was proud. I was raised by wolves, and I'm proud to be one. That's it.
so many memories here, and the family hopes you'll join them in a few minutes in the social hall, the Great Hall this way, so that you can find them out and share your memories. And if you don't get to today, I hope you'll write them down for children and grandchildren and others. There are so many Evelyn stories, and I've only known her for 7, 8 years, and more so before COVID. Yours are just as important to have the time to share. I will only say that until COVID, she would come to the building to pay her bills. And I'd get a call from my office, and I'd know, Evelyn Siegel's here. I'd go down the hall, always good to see her. See, maybe she's coming to me to tell a story. I'm here to pay my bills. And then, even though she could mail them, at that time she did have a driver, and she would say, how's the temple? How's the religious school? How's your family? And however the conversation ended, she turned away toward the door. Every meeting ended, don't tell my children I'm here. It was our little secret. And she'd go back out to the car. Evelyn was incredible. And I was thinking that while I did not have her skill, there is a difference between ceramics and other arts. And although each of them personally reflects the heart and soul of the person, there is no brush, there is no lens, there is no tool. The very fingerprint of the person, in its cracks, its shapes, and its curves, is there. And we call that the Tselem. Tselem is more than a fingerprint. Tselem is a soul print. And as we've heard, and as so many of you know, and so many thousands of others, Evelyn Tselem, her soul print, just as it is in that pottery, it's in her children and grandchildren and her cousins. It's in so many seniors, even those who never met her. It's in the children at that school and so many other schools. It's in this city. It's in the DNA of this congregation. Evelyn Tselem, her soul prints, just like everything she ever created with her hands, each one a little bit different. And so we vow to her immortality, which lives in what she created, in each of us, in every student in life she taught. And so we vow, in the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember her. In the blowing of wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember her. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and we are in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember her. And we vow as long as we live, she too will live, for she is a part of us as we remember her. Our final two prayers are El Malei Rachamim, the Jewish prayer of mourning and memory, in which we ask God to watch over her, and then the Kaddish, which is an affirmation of life, even in the hardest times, that we may live fully. If you are able, you can open the inside of the pamphlet. We rise, and after I chant in Hebrew, please feel free to join with me in English if you wish. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamse Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, Im Kadoshim Utorim, Kezohar Rakia, Mazirim et Nishmat Evelyn Siegel, Shahalcha Liolama, Ba'arachamim, Yastira Beseter Kenafav Liolamim, Vaitzror Bitzur Achaim et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. O God, full of compassion, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to our loved one who has entered eternity. Master of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. The eternal God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. On the back, we join together these words of life, the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, bi'almal divrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chaye echon u'v'yom echon v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'galal v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitala. Shmeid kutsha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiram bi'amal v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemai. V'chaim alinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imruam. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Alinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam levracha. May God console each of you who knew Evelyn with all who mourn here in Zion and Jerusalem, all who mourn wherever they may be. Amen.